I'm Alex.
I'm Connie.
Welcome back to the Faria Files. Today we're going to be talking about post-high school plans, the differences we see in our generations, and I guess the problems I feel like my generation is facing that no one else really had to. A lot of unprecedented stuff, if you ask me.
If you ask me.
Yeah.
So, should I talk first about the path I took and what it seemed like most people did in my generation?
Yeah.
You want to do that?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. So, I graduated high school in 1992. So, that's, I don't know, 25,
40, 30.
30 years. It was a while ago. And I knew a lot of people that went off to four-year universities. I knew quite a few people who did community college. Same kinds of things we're looking at now, right? Tech school, community college, the military,
How
four-year
much was
university.
that? Do you know how much universities cost back then?
I feel like it was just less than now, but no, I don't know exact
No.
amounts at all. So for me, I was on the college track. I was taking honors classes and things like that in high school. And then I think my social life kind of was taking more precedence and probably my academics, and I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. And it was around that time that the military recruiters were coming to the school. So I thought, boy, I'd love to travel and see the world, and that could be a great way to do it. So I started looking into options with the military. Now, I'm a 17-year-old girl at the time, and so the way I chose the branch I went with is, I don't know, not the same way I would choose it now, but this was my mindset. So I was like, I don't want to do the Marines because that's like hardcore military, and I'm not a hardcore military person. This is 17-year-old me thinking. And I don't want to do the Army because that's super basic. And now I'm down to the Navy or the Air Force. And I don't like the Navy uniforms because they're bell bottoms and they're white. So I'm going to go to the Air Force. This is my thinking. It all worked out.
Okay.
I know. So I joined the Air Force. Lots of stories for another day. And I ended up being a staff writer and an editor. And for the base newspaper, I did public relations. It was a lot of great experience. I did not travel far. I grew up in California and I got as far as Wyoming. So I got married and yada, yada.
Yeah.
So anyway, I only did a couple years in, and I ended up getting the GI Bill, which is money that helps towards college. So then when I got out, I had money that went towards going to community college and doing some education that way. So that's the path that I ended up taking. Cost me no money, and then I was making money as soon as I left home, which was at 18.
Doing what? Because you didn't get your AA till what, like 3 years ago, right?
What do you mean doing what?
What
Being in the military. I got paid.
Oh, okay,
being in the
that's what I
military.
thought you made it sound like you were like doing something
So
else.
I graduated high school. I was 17 in June, and then I turned 18 in December. And I was in the military in January. So when I left to go off in the military, I never returned home after that. And I felt like the majority, maybe even almost all of my friends, that's what they did. They left home after they graduated high school, and whether it was the military, a few people who went that path, or they were going off to college, and they didn't go back home. They went off to school, and then they went and had a job or got married or whatever their path was. And now, having friends who have kids who graduate from high school, a lot of kids who might do community college, or some who do the military, or some who do a four-year university, but so many of them are coming back home, or they go out and they work for a few years and then they come back home. And I feel like it's taking kids a lot longer to become financially independent than they did during my generation.
Oh, no shit.
You know, so when you think about your options, so you graduated high school in June, and what did you even explore as your options for you personally?
Oh, well, for me personally, it was college. I mean, I just want to look at it from a broader perspective. So, from my generation's perspective at looking at things going out of high school, you have trade schools or apprenticeships, things like that, community college, military, four-year university.
So same kind of options.
That's pretty
that we
much not
had.
changed, right?
Right.
Problem is, you just feel so trapped no matter what you do.
Meaning what?
So if you want to go into the military, that's great, but not everyone wants to go into the military. It's not a thing a lot of people do. I really probably only know 5 or 6 people off the top of my head from our graduating class that went there. I'm sure there were more, but in terms of people I know and things I know people were doing, the military was not a very big thing.
Okay.
Right?
And that could be different depending on where you live.
And yeah, it definitely
right?
could be. Definitely
okay.
could be. The
All
point
right.
is, not everyone's going to do that.
Right.
And so then...
And not everyone did it
No.
when I graduated
Right,
either.
right.
I mean, it was a small number, but yeah.
But that's an option. It's a viable option for the people who choose to do it. Then you have trades or apprenticeships, which maybe welding or something like that, working with...
Car mechanic,
Yeah.
elevator repair
Exactly.
person.
Exactly.
Great way to make money with all of those trades, by the way, and a lot less
Yes.
debt. But you have to still have a passion
You have to
and a knack,
want to
and
do that.
That
and it's
needs to be your
totally cool.
thing.
I'll get to that in a second about, I guess, the lack of preparedness in high school. I think that's being pushed throughout the country.
How do you push a lack of
No,
preparedness?
I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So anyways, you have trade schools, and you can do a trade school or apprenticeship or something like that and become a mechanic or a repairman or a welder or one of these types of jobs, which if you want to do that, all the power to you. Like you said, great way to make money. Once again, not something too many people do that I know, and that could be just where we grew up. But then you're left with college options and university options. And so...
Or nothing and just try to work. I mean,
Or just
right,
work,
I guess.
right?
Yeah. But when you're talking about secondary,
But
post-secondary
when you're talking about...
education and training. Okay.
So, and this is what I mean by the lack of preparedness. I think I'm saying across the country, and this is just unanimous for every high school. I mean, I don't like to generalize things very often, but this is quite literally pretty much every single high school across the country is literally a breeding ground for universities, which I think is the wrong approach, and it doesn't get anyone anywhere.
So why do you think that? I mean, what do you mean by that?
Well,
Do you think that it was pushed by every one of your teachers and counselors was,
Yes.
high school, college, high school, college?
yes. So they say,
Okay.
you don't have to go off to college. Like, it's understood that that's not something
A path
everyone
for
has to
everybody.
do.
Right.
But at the same time, schools have fundamentally not changed in, over a century.
Meaning
you
what?
go to a classroom, you have teachers that teach you math and science and social studies and history. And certain science classes, you can take biology or chemistry or other things. And you can take math, and then you can take pre-calculus or calculus. And you can take a history class, you can take a U.S. history class, you can take European history class,
Okay.
government politics class.
Right.
You can
You
take
go
a
to
language.
school and you learn stuff. How should it be different? I don't even
Well,
understand what you mean.
That's the thing. All of that stuff is helpful for people who go to college, but none of that is helpful for any of the other options.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
So it's putting you on the path for
So
further
it is.
education.
Even if they could tell you, hey, college isn't for everyone, but why aren't you taking AP classes? Why aren't you taking this class? You're failing in this class. I don't give a shit if I'm failing in Spanish if I want to go be a welder. But it can screw your degree, it can screw your diploma up, it can screw your whole high school experience up, and then it just sets you on this.
But here's the thing. I think that being in high school, part of that is getting a general education.
Yes.
So in Washington State, there is a bare minimum of credits that you need to have in certain things. And then there is a suggested amount of credits you should have in things if you're going on the college path. So if you're going to be in high school and it's recommended that you have 2 years of a world language, but you should
It's required.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's required that you have 2 years in Washington State, but it is recommended that you have 4 if you're going to go on to college. So that having those 2 years, even if you're going to go be a welder, even if you're going to go in the military, even if you're just going to work, that's your bare minimum that you have to have. There's a bare minimum of math you have to have and of science, and things like that. And I get where you feel like there's certain things you shouldn't have to do if you're not going to further your education. But sometimes you don't know what you want to do and what's going to spark your interest.
I know.
When you're 14 going into college, high school, you can't be like, I don't need foreign language and I don't need any science because I don't like that stuff. And then you could go and end up being in, some kind of, in chemistry, be like, oh, this is super interesting. I do think I want to do a job with this.
That happens, but I still think having these minimums and having these arbitrary requirements of classes you have to take when there's people who know they want to do something else is stupid.
Who at 14, which is about the age you are when you start high school, knows what the hell they want to do the rest of their lives?
That's a freshman though.
But that's when you start school. So are you saying that there should be a certain point when you're in school? Is it 15, 16, 17? Is it sophomore? Is it junior? That it should be like, okay, you can just take whatever you want to take.
Not necessarily. I think the whole education system as a whole just needs to be fundamentally changed. And I don't know what that change needs to be, and I don't have all the answers, but
Do you have any suggestions?
I'm simply pointing out, okay, not
like, what is it
not
that
entirely,
you think needs to be changed?
What I think needs to be changed, I think the problem is that, like I said, it's a breeding ground for universities, and I think it forces children to, even from a young age, but if we're just looking at high school, it forces children to conform to certain standards. It's a mass indoctrination program. Holy shit, across the country, the amount of bullshit that gets peddled to kids is ridiculously stupid.
Do you want to go into that at all?
Not right now.
Okay.
But
I mean, that's like a big, like throw out comment.
Oh,
it's
but
a mass indoctrination system.
It's a big throw out comment,
what
but
are we turning this into?
It's completely true, though.
Meaning what?
I don't want to get political, but but the education system as a whole has an extreme left-leaning bias, 100%. And I don't want to get into that, but any kid who's been in school would know this, especially at the university level. You see across the country, there are right-wing political commentators who are by no means neo-Nazis or alt-right. They are simply conservative,
right-leaning,
who are
absolutely
banished from campus, get the shit protested out of them, which is, you're right, but they are absolutely shunned and shadow banned from just speaking. They're shut up, they're censored.
Okay.
They can't do anything. And then the other narrative is pushing all these kids, and it's a story for another day. But the point is,
we have a lot of stories for another day. We say that a lot.
Okay. Going back to my very main point, the education system as a whole needs to be fundamentally changed in the sense that it takes away kids' creativity, I think, because you conform them to this classroom setting that has not changed in, like I said, over a century. But I mean, everything around us as a society has developed and advanced and changed in a lot of different ways to accommodate just for the ways people live and people are right now. But the classroom setting and the way things are run hasn't.
And I think in your mainstream public school, that's probably right. I think there's alternative schools.
Who goes to like charter schools
or there's
and
charter
private
schools and private schools where you may have other alternatives.
Okay.
Or you get a good counselor who finds a way to, open up and expose you and find, different programs. I know when I worked at a high school, a public high school, worked at a private high school, worked at a public high school, and I know that we had programs where there was aerospace engineering that kids could go and they could take, some at another place,
That's
to something.
cool.
So there were certain things where there would be these really cool opportunities for kids that they could jump right into, learning with stuff. Or you could go to Bellingham Technical School through Running Start.
Sure.
If you know what it is you want to do.
That's an option.
And you could start taking
So I want to get into that. So let's say it's about like a third of kids will go on to college, which is a significant chunk, right? If not more than that, depending on where you grew up.
Your old school is like 98%.
Exactly.
But typical school, totally not numbers like that. Yeah.
So you could go to a community college, which is
much cheaper.
Which is much cheaper for the 2 years. But then after that, I mean, there are some things you can do in an associate's degree. So great, all power to you. But if you want a 4-year degree, the majority of kids are going to go into debt for it. And yes, you don't need to go to college for everything, and I get that. But if you want to be able to start a business and get business loans, if you want to be a doctor or a pilot maybe, or do something in STEM, do things that are at the end of the day going to make you more money, so you have to get a better degree and more education for it. There's just no reason college should be as expensive as it is, which is just another problem with the education
So what
system.
did you choose as your post-high school plan?
I chose a 4-year university that's expensive as shit.
Right. So you had the option to look at an in-state. You had the option to go community college for 2 years.
2 years, and then I would
and then transfer
anyways.
to a university. You could have gone to an in-state public school. You could have lived at home.
Actually, I didn't get into UW.
You didn't even apply to wow. You didn't apply to like Western Washington University, local school. It's good. Plenty of people are happy there, right up the street. You could have lived at home, gone there. It could have been a lot cheaper. I'm just saying there are options where you don't have to go in debt as much as you did. And we talked about this. So what made you choose leaving home and going to a private California university that's as expensive as shit, in your own words?
Because it's gonna
go that route.
Because it's going to set me up better for the future. They have a better business program than any of the other schools in state I would have looked at. Okay. I mean, if I want to be a teacher, great, I can go to Western. Like I get that.
Great teaching program
but if it doesn't have the program you want to do, then you're going to look elsewhere. But if you don't want to go in-state, and I know I used this example before, like if you're living in Nebraska or Maine or somewhere else where they don't have a name brand state school, I guess, like university.
But some people would say you don't need a name brand school.
You don't. But I'm saying when you get
into to get the degree. It could be from Podunk University.
You need to get into the degree. But when a recruiter is looking at you and you're trying to get a job and someone has a 4-year degree from Podunk University and someone has a 4-year degree
Podunk. It's not Podunk.
I thought you just made up a word, to be honest.
Podunk. You've never heard that?
No.
There's Podunk Town and there's
So anyways, someone has a degree from this place, and someone has a degree from
Yale.
A more reputed, not even Yale, just
something that's more well heard of. And I think it really depends on what kind of a job you are going to get, and then it gets to a point where your work speaks for itself.
It does. So there's more to get into this though, because this isn't just about the education system. This is simply, I guess you could say, adult life in general for kids in my generation. So you have this giant student debt crisis, which is part of the student's fault. I don't think people should be going in as much debt as they can, but at the same time, why should that even be an option? I mean, these kids are 20 years old, probably don't really know what they're doing. They just want to get an education, and all of a sudden they end up with $100,000 in debt. Like, they're supposed to know what the hell that means.
Yeah.
There's hardly any financial literacy classes in high school anyways. So you have that problem. You have this financial literacy problem on one hand, and then also just this ballooning student debt crisis that's probably going to turn into something like the subprime mortgage crash in 2009. Speaking of recessions and crashes, we're in another one now, probably the worst in American history, with over 22 million people filing for unemployment, millions losing their jobs.
Yeah, everything is about to explode from all this COVID
everything's
stuff.
about to explode.
It's going to implode.
Yeah. Someone in my generation's already lived through 2 financial crises. It doesn't really set us up for a very promising future. On top of that, you have, not to get into like political things, but you have a fucking warming planet. Global warming, climate change is a very real thing. I don't think we should take these radical progressive stances, but it's a real thing that no one's really addressing.
People are addressing. They talk about it all the time. What do you mean no one's addressing it?
Okay, name one thing that has been done to combat it.
I don't know. We just shut down the whole country for COVID. I think it's helping the planet.
Yeah, great. It's all talk but no action. You have automation and robots that are set to take a shitload of other jobs that people who didn't go to college are all going to be left jobless, and you just have a very bleak, not promising future in a lot of cases for kids.
That's so depressing.
It is depressing, but it's how a lot of kids feel. Why do you have so many kids that are 25, 26 living back at home?
Because it's so expensive out there.
Exactly.
And they're not setting themselves up well with what they're looking at doing for their future. Because some kids are making it work, right? I think some kids
are making it work.
Yeah, but you can't go and get a minimum wage job and expect it to be a living wage job.
I don't think you can. That's another sort of argument you get into. I mean, minimum wage, I don't think it really should be a living wage necessarily. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that are struggling to just get by on a lot of things. And I haven't personally experienced this yet, but I know just looking at things down the line, let's see, I graduate from university and I have this degree and I hopefully get set up with internships through sophomore, junior, all these years, and am able to potentially land a job, I guess. But the cost of houses and the cost of just living is just exponentially going up. And again, minimum wage isn't rising with that, but nothing is in terms of getting paid. I mean, shit is just getting more and more expensive, and you're just feeling more and more like the institutions and government doesn't really give a shit about you.
No,
I
it's
mean,
so depressing.
it's so depressing, but
I think it's also having to look at
Congress approval is at 9% a few years ago.
holy
Like
crap.
that is low. That's abysmally low. You cannot tell me you think the politicians in government have your best interest in mind. They just don't. It's
some
a
do,
fact.
but a whole heck of them lot.
90% of them don't.
I know.
I mean, talking about college and stuff as well. You had everything's about money. So if you're not it's elite class, fuck off. Like you had that Full House actress. I don't remember her name. Pay to get her kids into college.
Lori Loughlin
and other celebrities. You shouldn't.
and Felicity Huffman.
Felicity Huffman, yeah.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have that happening. You shouldn't have people who have the money get
Which is
whatever.
why there's a lawsuit about it.
Okay, lawsuit,
And
schmawsuit.
Felicity Huffman
They're gonna
went
get
to
away
jail.
with it.
No, Felicity Huffman went to jail for like a
For how-
second.
For like a second.
Oh,
People who have power, people who have money can get away
That's
with
like a
whatever the
whole
hell they
separate
want.
conversation,
There's a
though.
whole other separate conversation, but it adds to the point where we don't say yes. It's a depressing outtake on life, but there are not a lot of things you could positively point out from it. I mean, God, the prices of a house in most places in the country.
But you also have to be open-minded to that. I think so. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and when my parents bought their first house, I think it was like $60,000, and it was like a 3,000 square foot, 4-bedroom house.
I don't know what square foot
in the
means,
Bay
but-
Area. That's like bigger than this house.
Shit.
So in the Bay Area, that it would be like $800, $900, $1,000 now, 30, 40
Yeah.
years, 40 something years later. And anyways, that's how it was then. So when I graduated high school, the idea of still living in the Bay Area when it's so crazy expensive, I can't imagine. Now, I had a lot of friends who graduated. They got jobs, some of them getting paid really well living in the Bay Area, other ones struggling a little bit more. But I think sometimes, when you finish school, you can't just make this assumption that you're going to be able to live where
not at
you
all.
grew up. Where we live here in the Pacific Northwest, incredibly expensive
Yes,
up in this area.
I agree.
San Francisco, California, but there's other areas in the country that your money would go a lot further. So
Yes.
it's finishing up with your degree or finishing up with your training or education and making that scary move to go somewhere else and try to get things started.
Yes.
After I got out of the military, Dad and I got married, we were in the military, and then we packed up our bags and we moved somewhere else that was going to have more opportunity for us than where we were at the time.
Sure.
And sometimes you have to look at doing that, not automatically coming back to the safety net of staying at home,
I get that.
But you're right, everything is so much more expensive now. So when you think about your future, how do you see that? Do you see yourself moving back home?
I wouldn't say.
The answer is
back
no.
home.
No, I don't, Mom. No, I don't see myself moving back home. Once
Back-
I leave the house, I'm not coming back home.
Oh, well, not like. I thought you meant home as in like Washington State.
My house.
No, I don't. Why would I do that? Ideally,
I don't know, but
Ideally, I would have
so many people
be
do.
competitive in the labor market with a 4-year degree and
Okay.
be able to get a job somewhere. I don't plan on living back home.
So how are
But-
you going to keep from moving back home? You know what I mean?
Shit,
What do you
if
do?
I know, get internships, set myself up like that, which is great. Which is what college can be great for. You can get good jobs and you can get.
It's all about connections
Internships
and
and
networking.
connections.
And you have to be
But-
willing to suffer a little when you first go out on your own
Oh,
and not have
yes,
the
no,
expectation to
I
live
get that.
like your
I
parents.
I
right off the
100%
bat.
get that. There's a lot of people who talk about having to live paycheck to paycheck and all that stuff, but then they have an iPhone and have other
Right,
things.
and have a nice
So
car
I,
and have.
so it's like
you might
it's
have to have-
prioritizing things. and
Right.
I get that, but I still think the overall outlook on the future just is not as positive as it could have been for generations past. It feels
Mm-hmm.
like there's a lot of problems that have been bubbling up and bubbling up and bubbling up,
that your generation will have to deal with.
and we're gonna feel the blunt of all of that. Blunt, everything, same thing.
Yeah, but don't feel blunts. You feel brunts.
Feel the brunt. That doesn't sound like a
Brunt.
word.
I know.
Feel the brunt of all
Anyway,
this.
Yeah.
And I mean,
So how do you fix it? What do you
You-
do? How do you give a kid hope that's like in high school or graduating here in the next day or two? I mean, the next day or two, the next year or two. You're like, everything's gonna suck, and the generations before us are leaving us a bunch of shit, and life's gonna be hard. Good luck. That is so depressing.
That is depressing, but that's, I mean, at the very least, a realistic take on it. I'm not saying you should just give up. Like, don't do that. It's just acknowledging the fact that you're gonna have to work a hell of a lot harder than your parents
Okay.
probably did, and it's just gonna suck, and you just have to accept that. And I mean, if you want to get into politics and government, that would be one of the better ways to go. I mean, simply in terms of being able to change policy and influence things in a more positive direction.
Is that why you're looking at wanting to go that route eventually?
That definitely is. I mean, God, you look at politicians, they're so old. Mitch McConnell's 70 something. Nancy Pelosi's 80 years old.
How old are both of our presidential nominees?
78 and 72, 73.
That is crazy.
And then Bernie Sanders was 79, and Michael Bloomberg was 79, and Tom Steyer was 7. I mean,
they all still are that old.
Yeah, they still are. They haven't died yet. But I mean, in a couple years, they probably will. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think people should be retired by then. Not
yes,
be
you
getting
shouldn't.
Into politics
that's
and
the thing.
Running
You
our
shouldn't.
damn country.
You shouldn't retire at 65 and then all of a sudden decide you want to run for office. And that's a big, just systemic problem with our government. Is once you're in. You're
set up.
You're set up, and there's no getting out. It's so hard to vote out incumbents who have the money and the power and the influence and the lobbyists and all this other bullshit.
And that's the thing. So you want younger people to run, and you want people who have more energy and passion and a different way of seeing things. But financially, when you have somebody who's running a campaign, spending thousands and thousands of dollars,
exactly, you can't compete
locally,
against a lot of that.
When I first ran for office, I think I spent like less than $1,000. Right, and that when I won city council.
City council
this is like 10 years ago.
8,000 people at the
time.
Yes,
yeah. So when I ran the last time, people were spending thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars to run in a small local campaign, and you got up to the county level, and it was more than that. And you look at
even the state senate, it's like hundreds of thousands.
Yes.
And I'm like.
So if you want to go out there and make a change, well, okay, great. You have to go shake hands and network. You have to really get money and sell yourself to people that have money and to businesses.
And I hate to say it has to be like this. Not trying to incite a revolution, because I'm not saying we need one necessarily, but in the most peaceful.
Okay.
In the most peaceful.
Where's this going?
I'm not exactly sure, but people need to, and this goes beyond just living outside of high school and becoming an adult in this generation. This is definitely more political, but just in terms of life, I guess, because politicians and government, I mean, impacts a lot of what you do in your life and has an effect on your way of living in a lot of different ways.
That's what they do.
Yes, exactly. The thing is, people just need to wake up and realize that the way things are right now suck. Everything is broken, and more people are starting to realize that, but nobody's doing anything about it. I don't know what you should be doing about it. I don't think you should have some revolution and riot in the streets, but I think people need to realize that Democrats and Republicans are different sides of the same corrupted coin, and you're not going to get anywhere just electing people by the letter you see by their name, and that's not going to get us anywhere. And so people need to go for these younger candidates, and you need to reach out to them, and you need to lobby the hell out of these younger people. You don't need to have progressive radical ideas to get elected as a young person, but I think these young people are going to better see the problem. I mean, they're firsthand facing all of these problems, and they're addressing the things that our generation feels like needs to be addressed. I mean, I've said it a lot of times with this bleak outlook on the future, but there's just a lot going on that we don't know I mean, climate change, like I said before, there's a lot of talk, not a lot of action. Not saying we need some Green New Deal. I think that's ridiculous, but there needs to be action done to combat that. And I mean, taking on what Andrew Yang was talking about with robots and automation taking our jobs, whether it's happening in 5 years or 20 years, it's a very real possibility. People who have the money to buy and mass produce all these robots to do all our stuff, they're going to be able to do that. That's wiping out jobs for millions of people across the country throughout our generation's life. And you just have governments and institutions that you feel like don't care about your interests anymore. You're just a pawn in this stupid broken system. And once you're low, once you're low on this tier and this bracket of social class, I guess you could say, it's so hard to rise up from that. It's really like elites versus everything. I mean, not to get into politics again, but the media is bullshit on either side. The media don't listen to the media for shit. Honestly, they suck. They are propaganda machines on both sides. They're indoctrinating everybody. And it shouldn't be a matter of race or sex or sexual orientation or whatever. The real only factor of true discrimination in the country is class and money and power. I mean, It's clear as day if you open your eyes and you look at what's going on. It's going to be a matter of the 99, 98% versus the top 1 or 2 who control everything, whether they control it on the front lines or whether it's through back alley deals and shady stuff that no one sees. It's being done. If you have power and you have money, you can do whatever the fuck you want in this country and get away with it. Like, Jeffrey Epstein, that is something people should never stop talking about until stuff is. I'm serious with that.
No. I believe you, but you've super digressed on this like monologue of corruption and politics that we're not going to talk about politics. But let me get into politics.
Adult life is gonna suck for our generation.
Can we end on a more positive note? And maybe we need to have another podcast about politics that you kept trying to avoid but kept ending up on this
because
time.
it just inevitably goes to that when you're talking about
just
post
about
high school.
No, I totally get it, and that's fine, and we can talk about that. But let's I'm hungry. Let's end this on a happier note instead of a bleak negative note.
Well,
there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Well, sort of. I think with coronavirus, a lot of people have been staying inside, but a lot of people have been able to think to themselves and kind of evaluate what's going on. I encourage people to look into a lot of things we've already talked about and figure out what's going on. But I think that, everyone at this point knows that whatever normal happens after quarantine and coronavirus and all this stuff is gone, whatever life is like after this won't be the same as it was before. But what that reality is going to be dependent on what we do now and what we do in the next couple of years. Not even this election cycle. It's starting locally and building from there. So on the positive note, we have a great opportunity to be able to change things right now because of how obvious so much of the bullshit is being unmasked, if that makes sense.
Okay.
No one trusts anything that's happening on either side of whatever political spectrum you want to look at. No one is trusting anything. People see that there's a problem. People see that everything is broken, and more things are coming to light because of the coronavirus. I guess you could say that's a silver lining in so much bad stuff going on, but it paves the way for a giant wave of people to come in and solve this problem. So I think if you're willing to step up to it and put in the work, it's going to take a lot of change. It's not going to just be sitting back and letting all this happen and saying, well, I'm just going to go and work my minimum wage job that's not going to be able to afford rent in any apartment in any state ever because everything's just getting more expensive. It's not about being complicit anymore. It's going to suck, but it's going to be what our generation and maybe the age of people that are between me and you in their 20s right now. I don't know what generation they fall into, but it's going to be about just getting off your ass and doing something. And it's not going to...
What are you going to do?
What am I going to do?
What are you going to do that's any different? And I don't expect you to go change the world like today.
Educate yourself. I think that's the biggest thing. And it doesn't have to be through college. I think people need to read a lot more, and people need to look into things a lot more and ask questions. Look at everything with skepticism. That's the biggest thing, because more and more people are just trusting what they see on their phones or what they see in the internet and what they see in technology, and it's
what's shared over and over.
It's this big propaganda indoctrination machine, not even politically. It's more just for the masses, for the people in charge.
We share things so much differently now. We didn't have that for me growing up.
And look at things with skepticism. Don't trust...
False information is shared a lot more now.
Don't look at Snopes and be like, oh shit, well they said this was true and they're fact checkers. No.
Okay, Snopes is pretty great though.
Sometimes
it totally
they're pretty great.
Disproves things where I'm like, people stop sharing the bullshit.
Sometimes, but you just need to get to the direct source. Find the video that someone said. Find the actual thing someone wrote.
That part is true.
And I know it's hard, and if you can't find it, don't start formulating your own opinion and spouting bullshit about it. Because once you do, it spreads like wildfire, and then that's how people believe what they want to be, and that's what polarizes and politicizes everything you see everywhere, and that's what puts people against each other. So I think the biggest thing is some common message of, I guess, unity between people, because it's not, like I said, it's not some political thing at this point. It's more I don't want to say us versus them, because it doesn't need to be some sort of revolution, violent type thing, but it needs to be waking up and realizing there's a lot of change that needs to happen, and all of these issues affect so many of us, so much more of us, in so many more ways than we all realize, because we're distracted by other things that don't even matter.
We are so not going to fix this in 30 minutes.
No.
I know. I mean, not that I thought we would, but
we're not.
Question things. There is hope. It's not just all,
there is hope,
bleak.
But it's acknowledging how shit it is right now, or you're not going to fix it. You need to wake up and realize how bad it is.
You have to recognize problems when there are problems, and you have to be open-minded to make changes in order to fix the problems. Surround yourself by positive people. Surround yourself by people that are also willing to make changes. If that's your route. Not everybody's out to change the world. I get that. Some people just want to stand by and let other people fix it.
But yeah, next this decade, I guess, because we're in 2020, this next decade is just going to be so vastly different. I mean, every decade is, but this one is going to be so different than any other decades you've seen in recent history, really. There's been a lot of...
Of course it is. What kind of statement is that?
There's been a lot of things that have stayed the same throughout history, and there's a lot of things there's a lot of problems, like we already said, have been bubbling up and bubbling up and bubbling up. And I mean, this decade is gonna be when you see all of it.
People are recognizing problems.
Yes, exactly.
And like you said, with COVID, I think it's brought to light even more so where some of the problems are, and maybe there are bigger people out there that are looking to make changes, for the future.
Yes.
But I think we're gonna have to wrap it up here.
Yeah, I'm hungry.
Maybe our next one we can get into something
maybe
more political. We'll see. I'm hungry too.
I'm hungry.
Dad's got dinner going.